This is Job Search Reality. Todd Brooks from Athens, GA, sharing the truth about the ups and downs of trying to find your place. The interviews, the waiting game, the hopes and doubts we all face, but I keep moving forward every day here in Athens, GA.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. I'm your host, Todd Brooks, coming to you from Athens, Georgia. This is July 31st, 2026. It's the final day of July, so I'm wrapping up a couple of things this week. I'm wrapping up my 31 Days of AI series that we do on YouTube, and I also put some of those videos up on Facebook and Instagram as well. And then tomorrow, we're starting 31 Days at the Beach that will be broadcast on YouTube. So whether you're walking to work, walking the dog, working out, or maybe you're sitting at your kitchen table filling out yet another job application, I'm really glad you're here. This podcast is where we have honest conversations about careers, leadership, artificial intelligence, and what it's really like trying to build a career in today's rapidly changing job market. Every week, I try to bring you practical advice, real stories, and conversations that help make sense of a hiring process that seems to be changing almost every day. Today's episode is one I've been looking forward to because this week I came across an opinion article in the New York Times that really caught my attention. The headline was, "The hunt for a job has never been worse. These applicants are fighting back." When I read that headline, my first thought was, finally, someone else is talking about what job seekers have been experiencing, because if you've been listening to this podcast, you already know that this isn't just theory for me. I've been living it. I've experienced interviews that I thought went really well. I've experienced applications that disappeared into what felt like a black hole. I've experienced waiting weeks, sometimes months, without hearing anything. And judging from the comments I receive, I'm far from alone. One thing I really appreciated about the article is that it didn't simply blame employers. It also didn't simply blame artificial intelligence. Instead, it described what many people are calling the purgatory job market. Think about that phrase for a second. Purgatory. You're not hired. You're not rejected. You're just waiting. Your resume gets uploaded. An automated system reviews it. Maybe you're invited to complete an assessment. Maybe you record answers to interview questions. Maybe you speak with a recruiter. Maybe you interview with 3 or 4 different people. Then nothing. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. You're left wondering, did I do something wrong? Did they hire someone else? Did they forget about me? Did anyone even read my resume? I think every job seeker has asked one of those questions at some point. Now, before we go any further, I want to make something very clear. This episode is not about attacking AI. In fact, if you follow my YouTube channel or listen to previous episodes of this podcast, you know I'm actually a big believer in artificial intelligence. I spent an entire series talking about AI. I use AI to help organize ideas, research topics, improve my content, and learn new skills. Technology itself isn't the problem. The question is, how are we using it? Because technology should make our lives better. It should help us solve problems. It should create opportunities. But if you're not careful, technology can also create distance between people. And nowhere is that more obvious than in today's hiring process. Have you noticed that applying for a job sometimes feels like calling customer service? You upload your resume, an automated email says, "We've received your application." Great. Then there's nothing. No update, no timeline, no explanation. It's almost like calling your cable company and hearing, "Your call is very important to us." If my application is really that important, maybe don't leave it on hold for 6 weeks. And can we talk about online applications for just a minute? I upload my resume, then the website says, Now type everything that's already on your resume. And why is that? It's extremely frustrating. Didn't we just cover this? Then you answer 20 screening questions, complete a personality assessment, take a skills test, verify your email, verify your phone number, create another password you'll never remember. By the time you're finished, you feel like you've completed your taxes. At this point, I'm convinced my resume has its own frequent flyer miles. Now, let's look at this from the employer's perspective. If you're hiring for one position, you might receive hundreds of applications, sometimes thousands. No hiring manager can personally review every single one immediately. That's exactly why applicant tracking systems exist. They help organize candidates, filter applications, identify people who appear to match the position. From a business standpoint, that makes sense. But here's where I think we've reached a crossroads. Sometimes we become so focused on efficiency that we've forgotten about the human experience. Because while the company sees 800 applications, the applicant sees one opportunity that could change their life. Those are two very different perspectives. So maybe the question isn't, has AI broken hiring? Maybe the better question is, have we allowed technology to replace too much human interaction? That's a very different conversation. I don't believe AI should disappear. I think AI should assist people, not replace people. AI should help recruiters identify talent, not eliminate human judgment. Because here's something I've learned over the years. People don't hire resumes, people hire people. As someone who's interviewed applicants, managed employees, worked in education, customer service, sales, and management, I've learned that sometimes the best employee isn't the one with the perfect resume. Sometimes it's the person with the right attitude, the person who's willing to learn, the person who treats others with respect, the person who shows up every day. An algorithm can't always measure that. A conversation often can, and I hope that as AI continues to become part of hiring, we never lose sight of this. When we come back, I want to introduce something that I'm really excited about. Last night, I released 2 new episodes of my Workplace Q&A series on YouTube. One question is about a manager struggling with professional boundaries. The other is about hiring decisions, workplace culture, and inappropriate text messages between supervisors. We'll listen to both of those conversations, and then we'll talk about what they can teach all of us about leadership, professionalism, and why human judgment still matters, even in an age of artificial intelligence. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. Before the break, we talked about how artificial intelligence is changing the hiring process. We talked about applicant tracking systems, automated screening, and why I think companies still need people making people decisions. They got me thinking. Artificial intelligence might help sort resumes, but once someone is hired, AI can't teach professionalism. It can't teach judgment. It can't teach integrity. Those are lessons we learn from experience. That's one of the reasons I recently launched a new YouTube series called Workplace Q&A. The concept is pretty simple. Viewers send me questions about careers, management, leadership, human resources, and difficult workplace situations. Then I answer them based on my own experiences as a manager, educator, and employee. Last night, I released 2 new episodes that fit today's topic perfectly. The first question comes from someone we're calling William from Austin, Texas. Rather than summarize it, I'd like you to listen. Welcome to Workplace Q&A, the series where I answer your questions about careers, management, leadership, human resources, and the real situations people face every day at work. Now, the names and locations in these stories have been changed, but the workplace situations they're based on are real. My goal isn't to embarrass anyone, it's to help managers and employees learn from situations that can happen in almost any workplace. So let's jump into today's question. We have a question from William in Austin, Texas, and you should see a little pop-up box pop up right now that will show you the question and everything. But anyway, it says, Todd, this question is from William in Austin, Texas, and it says, Todd, I was a manager at my company, and I'm really struggling with something. One of the employees who reported to me constantly wanted to talk about her personal life. She told me about different men she was sleeping with, that she had had a threesome with one of her friends and another man, that she slept with married man, and even joked that she wanted to have sex with the owner's son and said she drugged him to make it happen. These conversations happened over and over again, and she was the one bringing them up, not me. The problem is that later she filed a complaint against me. Looking back, I can't believe I allowed those conversations to continue. What should managers do when an employee starts talking about their sex life or other highly personal topics? All right, so I'm going to dig into the answer to this question. William, first of all, thank you for writing in, because I think this is a situation that catches a lot of managers off guard. If an employee starts talking to you about their sex life, relationships, or other explicit personal matters, the best thing you can do is politely redirect the conversation. Now, I know that's easier said than done when you're in the middle of it. It doesn't always seem like a big deal, but you think you're just listening, and maybe you're trying to be supportive. Maybe you don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable. But here's the reality. Managers are held to a different standard. Whether you started the conversation or not, once those professional boundaries begin to disappear, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position. If that working relationship changes later or a complaint is filed, those conversations can suddenly become part of the story. One of the biggest management lessons I've learned is that it's okay to be friendly. It's okay to be approachable, but your conversation should stay professional. If an employee begins talking about explicit sexual topics, a simple response can save you a lot of trouble. You can just say, let's keep our conversations work-related. It may feel awkward for a few seconds, but it's a lot less awkward than sitting in an HR investigation trying to explain why these conversations continue. Professional boundaries don't just protect the company, they protect you, your employees, and your career. William, thanks again for your question. And if you do have a workplace question that you'd like to answer in a future episode of Workplace Q&A, leave it in the comments or send it my way. I'm Todd Brooks, and if you enjoy workplace stories, management lessons, and career advice, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time. You know, after listening to that again, there are a few things that really stand out to me. The first is that professional boundaries rarely disappear overnight. Usually, they disappear one conversation at a time. One joke, one story, one personal conversation, one moment where nobody says, maybe we shouldn't be talking about this. Before long, what's unusual starts feeling normal. One of the hardest lessons I've learned in management is that supervisors don't have the luxury of saying, I was just listening. People naturally look at managers differently. Employees look at managers differently. Human resources looks at managers differently. Courts may look at managers differently. Whether we think that's fair or not, that's reality. Managers are expected to model professional behavior. That doesn't mean you can't be friendly. It doesn't mean you can't care about your employees. In fact, I think the best managers genuinely care about the people they supervise. But caring about someone doesn't mean every conversation belongs in the workplace. Sometimes the most professional thing you can say is also the simplest. Let's keep our conversations work-related. It may feel awkward for 30 seconds, but it could prevent months or even years of problems later. One thing I want to emphasize is that boundaries aren't just there to protect managers, they protect employees too. Clear expectations reduce misunderstandings. They reduce confusion. They help everyone understand what is and isn't appropriate in a professional relationship. That's good for the employee, it's good for the manager, and it's good for the organization. When everyone understands where the line is, there's a lot less chance of someone getting hurt. You know, sometimes the biggest lessons in your career aren't the ones you learn from a textbook. They're the ones you learn after you've made a mistake. I think every manager, every supervisor, every business owner can probably look back at some point in their career and say, I wish I'd handled that differently. The important thing isn't pretending we've never made mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. and helping someone else avoid the same ones, or helping someone avoid making the same mistakes that you made. If William's story helps one new manager establish healthy professional boundaries, then sharing it was worth it. You know what's funny? When companies promote someone into management, here's what usually happens. Congratulations, starting Monday, you're in charge. That's it. Nobody hands you a survival guide. Nobody says, Chapter 7, what to do when an employee suddenly decides you're also their therapist. Or Chapter 9, how to redirect conversations without making everyone uncomfortable. Maybe business school should offer a class called Things Nobody Warned You About Before Becoming a Manager. I'd sign up for that one. Now let's connect this back to what we talked about earlier. Artificial intelligence can analyze keywords. It can compare resumes. It can schedule interviews. It can even summarize meeting notes. But AI can't tell a manager when it's time to politely redirect a conversation. That's judgment. That's emotional intelligence. That's leadership. And I don't believe technology is ever going to replace those qualities. If anything, as AI becomes more common, the human side of leadership becomes even more valuable. When we come back, we'll hear another workplace Q&A session. This one is about hiring decisions, text messages between supervisors, office politics, and something every manager should remember before hitting send on their phone. I think this conversation might be even more relevant to today's workplace than the first one. Stay with me. Welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. Today's episode began with a discussion about artificial intelligence and the modern hiring process. We talked about technology, automation, and why I believe companies still need human judgment. Now let's shift gears just a little. Our second workplace Q&A question isn't about AI. It's about something AI can never solve: character. Because no matter how advanced technology becomes, leadership still comes down to people making decisions. Let's listen to today's second workplace Q&A. This question comes from someone we're calling Charlie from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Welcome back to Workplace Q&A, the series where I answer your questions about careers, management, leadership, human resources, and the real situations people face in today's workplace. The names and locations in these stories have been changed, but the workplace lessons they're based on are real. My goal is simple: help you avoid some of the mistakes that managers and employees make every single day. So let's get to today's question. Today's question is from Charlie in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And Charlie writes, Hi Todd, my name is Charlie and I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin. I'm a hiring manager for a company and my supervisor has been sending me text messages for years that have really started to bother me. For example, we had an applicant named Jessica. Before I even interviewed her, my supervisor texted me, Don't hire her. She and her husband are potheads. There was never any discussion about her qualifications or experience. On another occasion, another manager recommended an applicant, and my supervisor responded by calling that person names and telling me not to hire anyone associated with him. I've also received messages where coworkers were referred to using vulgar names, and employees were talked about in ways that I didn't think belonged in a professional workplace. There were even times when he wanted hiring decisions changed because of personal feelings towards another employee rather than because of anything the applicant had done. Looking back, I realized I went along with a lot of it because he was my boss. I answered his texts, changed interviews when he asked, and tried to keep the peace. Now I'm wondering if I should have handled things differently. Todd, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Charlie, first of all, thank you for your writing in. I think your question is one that a lot of managers can relate to. If everything happened the way you described it, there are several things that would concern me. The first is the hiring process. Every applicant deserves to be evaluated on their own qualifications, not on rumors, gossip, or someone else's personal feelings. Once hiring decisions start being driven by personalities instead of performance, you're opening the door to poor decisions and an unhealthy workplace. The second thing that stands out is the communication itself. When supervisors begin using vulgar language about employees or applicants, or start making hiring recommendations based on personal grudges, that behavior can eventually become part of the company's culture Before long, people stop talking about work and start talking about people. The third thing is something you admitted yourself. You went along with it because he was your boss. Charlie, I understand that. Most people don't want to challenge the person they report to. We all want to keep the peace, but one of the hardest lessons I've learned is that just because a supervisor says something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. If I could go back and give you, or honestly my younger self, some advice, here's what I would do. I would keep every hiring decision focused on the applicant's qualifications. I would refuse to let personal opinions or office politics influence who gets interviewed or hired. And I'd remember that every text message you send has the potential to be read by human resources, company leadership, an attorney, or even a jury someday. If you wouldn't be comfortable explaining that message later, don't send it. Most importantly, don't become the culture you're working in. Sometimes the people around us normalize behavior that isn't actually professional. It's easy to slowly adapt until it no longer feels unusual. That's why every manager has to decide where their own standards are and stick to them, even if no one else does. Charlie, thank you again for your question. I hope there's something in my answer that helps you and maybe someone else watching today. If you have a workplace question you'd like to answer on a future episode of Workplace Q&A, send it to jobsearchrealityseries@gmail.com. Your name and location can always be changed for privacy. I'm Todd Brooks, and if you enjoy workplace stories, management lessons, leadership discussions, and career advice, please like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you next time on Workplace Q&A. I think Charlie's question is one of the most interesting ones I've received because on the surface, it sounds like it's about text messages. But I don't really think that's really what it's about. I think it's about culture. Culture is one of those words that's easy to throw around. Every company says they have a great culture. Every company talks about teamwork, respect, integrity, communication. Those words look great hanging on a wall. But culture isn't what you print on a poster. Culture is what happens when nobody from human resources is in the room. It's how leaders talk about people. It's how coworkers treat one another. It's the standards everyone quietly accepts. One thing I've noticed over the years is that unhealthy workplaces usually don't become unhealthy overnight. It happens slowly. Someone tells an inappropriate joke. Nobody says anything. Someone starts gossiping. Everyone laughs. Someone makes a hiring decision based on personal feelings instead of qualifications. People shrug and move on. Before long, the exception becomes the expectation. And one day, you wake up and realize, this isn't the workplace I thought it was. The scary part is, when you're living inside that environment every day, you may not even notice it's happening. Charlie's question also reminds me how difficult it can be to work for someone who has influence over your career. Let's be honest. Most people want to get along with their boss. Most people don't want conflict. Most people don't want to risk their job by pushing back. That's human nature. It's easy to sit behind a microphone and say, I would have done this, or I would have said that. But real life isn't always that simple. Sometimes you're trying to support your family. Sometimes you're worried about paying the mortgage. Sometimes you're afraid that speaking up could cost you your career. Those are real pressures. That's why I don't think those situations are black and white. They're complicated. If there's one thing experience has taught me, it's this. Every decision you make should be the one you can comfortably explain later. Every decision you make should be one you can comfortably explain later. Ask yourself a simple question. If this conversation was read out loud in the courtroom, would I still be proud of it? If the answer is no, don't send it. If the answer is, I hope nobody ever sees this, that's probably your answer right there. Technology has changed a lot over the years. But one thing hasn't changed. Text messages last. Emails last. Screenshots last. People often assume private conversations stay private. History has shown us that's not always true. You know, every office has at least one person who sends a message that says, Delete this after you read it. I've always found that funny, because if your first instinct is nobody should ever see this, maybe, just maybe, nobody should ever have to write it. And let's be honest, has anyone in history actually deleted that message? No. It probably got backed up to 3 different cloud services before lunch. Technology has a great memory, sometimes better than we do. So let's bring everything together. Earlier, we talked about artificial intelligence making hiring more efficient. Now we've talked about workplace culture, leadership, professional judgment, and ethics. Do you see the connection? AI can sort applications. AI can compare qualifications. AI can even recommend candidates. But AI can't decide what kind of leader you want to be. It can't decide whether you'll treat people with respect. It can't decide whether you'll take the high road when office politics start creeping in. Those decisions still belong to us. And honestly, I hope they always will. One of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is this. Your reputation isn't built during the easy days. It's built during the difficult ones. When everyone else is gossiping, will you? When everyone else is cutting corners, will you? When everyone else is making decisions based on personalities instead of principles, will you? Those are the moments that define a career. Not because anyone is watching, but because you know what kind of professional you want to become. When we come back, I want to bring everything together. We'll talk about what job seekers can do in an AI-driven hiring market, how to stand out without losing your authenticity, and I'll share this week's Todd's Take, the biggest lesson I believe every job seeker and every employer can learn from today's conversation. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. Today we've talked about artificial intelligence. We've talked about the hiring process. We've talked about workplace culture, leadership, professional boundaries, and ethics. Now I'd like to spend a few minutes talking directly to the people who are looking for work. Because whenever I release a podcast or a YouTube video, I usually receive the same question. Todd, what should I do? If AI is reviewing resumes, if companies are receiving hundreds of applications, if employers are using technology more than ever, how do you stand out? I don't pretend to have every answer, but I do have a few thoughts. Number one, learn AI, don't fear it. The first thing I tell every job seeker is this. Don't be afraid of artificial intelligence. Learn how to use it. The people who are successful over the next decade won't necessarily be the people who avoid AI. They're going to be the people who know how to work alongside it. Use AI to improve your resume, practice interview questions, research companies, organize your job search, brainstorm ideas, learn new skills, but don't let AI replace your own thinking. Use it as a tool, not as a substitute for your own judgment. Number two, remember that people still hire people. I know it sometimes feels like your resume disappears into a computer, but eventually a human being is going to make a decision. And when that interview happens, technology takes a back seat. That's when your personality matters, your attitude, your professionalism, your communication skills, your honesty, those things still matter. In fact, I think they matter more than ever, because while AI can help companies identify qualified candidates, it still can't tell whether someone will be a positive teammate. Number three, build a reputation before you need one. One thing I've learned throughout my career is that your reputation follows you. People remember how you treated customers, how you treated coworkers, whether you were dependable, whether you were honest, whether you screwed up. Technology changes. Character doesn't. Every interaction you're having today is helping build your professional reputation for tomorrow. Number four, keep learning. One of the biggest mistakes any of us can make is thinking we've learned enough, that we're the smartest person in the world. The workplace changes constantly. Artificial intelligence changes constantly. Industries change. Technology changes. But people who continue learning, continue growing, That doesn't necessarily mean going back to college. Sometimes it's reading an article, watching a webinar, taking an online course, learning a new software program, listening to podcasts, even conversations like this one. Learning never really stops. Number 5, don't let rejection define you. This may be the most important one. Job rejection hurts. There's really no way around it, especially when you've invested hours preparing, especially when you thought the interview went well, especially when you really wanted that opportunity. But here's something I've learned. Rejection doesn't define your future. It describes one decision, one company, one position. That's all. Don't allow one employer's decision to become your opinion of yourself. Once again, don't allow one employer's decision to become your opinion of yourself. You know, sometimes people ask me, Todd, what do you think is the most important skill someone can have today? And honestly, I don't think it's artificial intelligence. I don't think it's coding. I don't even think it's sales. I think it's adaptability. Because the people who succeed aren't always the smartest people in the room. They're often the people who are willing to learn, adjust, and keep moving forward. That's true whether you're 22 years old or 62 years old. Before we move into our final segment, I have one more observation. You know you've been job searching too long when you can complete an online application without looking at your resume. Previous employer, got it. Employment days, employment dates, memorize. Describe your greatest strength. I've rewritten that answer so many times, I think my computer could finish it for me. And don't even get me started on passwords. Every company wants you to create an account. At this point, I have more job application passwords than streaming services. If I ever forget one, I may accidentally reset my Netflix account trying to log into a hiring portal. When we come back, it's time for Todd's Take. I'll share the biggest lesson I took away from this week's New York Times article and the workplace Q&A discussions, and why I believe the future of hiring still depends on something that no artificial intelligence system will ever replace. Stay with me. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one final thought. When I first read that New York Times opinion piece, I expected it to be another article about artificial intelligence, another article about technology, another article about robots taking over the workplace. And after I finished reading it, I realized that's not really what it was about. It was about people. People trying to provide for their families. People trying to find meaningful work. People wondering why the hiring process has become so difficult. And people asking the question that I think all of us have asked at some point. Does anyone actually see me? If there's one lesson I hope you take away from today's podcast, it's this. Technology should help people. It should never cause us to forget that there are people behind every resume, behind every application. There's a person, a husband, a wife, a parent, a recent college graduate, a veteran, someone changing careers, someone who's been laid off, someone who's simply trying to build a better life. Sometimes we reduce people to a PDF file, a score, a keyword match, a percentage, but that's not who they are. Artificial intelligence can do some amazing things. It can summarize information in seconds. It can organize thousands of applications. It can recognize patterns that humans might miss. But there are still things AI can't truly measure. It can't measure kindness. It can't measure perseverance. It can't measure integrity. It can't measure what someone does after they failed. It can't measure how someone treats a customer who's having a terrible day. It can't measure the employee who quietly stays late to help a coworker. Those things still require people, and I hope they always will. To the employers listening, so if you're a business owner, a supervisor, a recruiter, or someone involved in hiring, I simply ask you to remember this. The hiring process isn't just another task on your calendar for the applicant. For the applicant, it may be one of the most important moments in their life. A simple email, a quick update, a phone call, those things matter. Communication matters. Respect matters. Even when the answer is no, sometimes people don't remember that they weren't hired. They remember how they were treated. And if you're listening today because you're looking for work, I want to talk to the job seekers for just a second. I want to encourage you. Don't confuse silence with failure. Don't confuse rejection with your worth. And don't let an automated hiring system convince you that you have nothing to offer. You do. Keep learning, keep networking, keep showing up, keep applying. Sometimes the opportunity you're looking for is one application away. Sometimes it's one conversation away. Sometimes it's someone you've never even met yet. Don't give up before the opportunity has a chance to find you. You know, people have asked me why I started the Job Search Reality Series podcast. The answer is actually pretty simple. I wanted to create the kind of conversation I wish had existed when I was navigating my own career transition. Not a podcast where someone pretends to have all the answers, but a place where we can have honest conversations, where we can talk about success, failure, artificial intelligence, leadership, management, and everything in between. If you've listened to this episode today and thought, I felt that way too, then this podcast is doing exactly what I hoped it would do. Before we wrap up, I've got one more observation. You know you've been job searching for a while when you start getting excited over every email notification. Your phone buzzes. You think, this is it. This has to be the recruiter. You grab your phone, open the email, and it's your package has been delivered. Well, at least something showed up today. Or my favorite, you finally get a call from an unknown number. Your heart starts racing. You answer with your most professional voice. Hello, this is Todd. And they say, we've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. Wrong opportunity. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe to the Job Search Reality Series podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's navigating today's job market. Once again, we are going to have some interesting series. We are wrapping up the 31 days of AI today. We're going to start 31 days at the beach tomorrow. And then in September, I'm launching a series called Horrible Bosses. And don't forget to check out my new Workplace Q&A series on YouTube. If you have questions about careers, leadership, management, human resources, or a difficult workplace situation, send it to jobsearchrealityseries@gmail.com. Your name and location can always be changed for privacy. Maybe your question will be featured in a future episode. Until next time, remember this. Artificial intelligence may change the way we work, but character will always define how we lead. I'm Philip Todd Brooks from Athens, Georgia. Thank you for listening to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. Take care of yourselves, keep learning, keep growing, and never stop believing that your next opportunity could be closer than you think. We'll see you next week.
Just waiting on that call to come through. Feels like I'm hovering in the Athens blue. All these interviews and empty spaces, looking for foundation, not just traces. I'm ready to build my nest and settle down, find my own place to land in this classic city town.